he's taking in here now. So that would always be the, you'd have to weigh one thing against the other. And at this point, I think it's about time you put the broom down.
Let's go. Come on.
Because he's going to have a lot of penalty points in here.
You can see and understand too, Beverly, how it can get frustrating for the human occupants of the carriage, and when these animals are so much bigger, and if sometimes they're just not going to do what you want them to.
Well, I mean, it'll just be that the horse is afraid, and maybe they don't have a lot of water to practice in. The other difficulty I think they're having today is that in this time, the in and the out are two different gates. So he has now missed going out of the out. So he would have been better off to put his groom down and let her lead the horse through.
So they've missed an entire obstacle, so that will have an adverse effect on their finish time.
That's correct.
Of course. Now they're in the last obstacle once upon a time. And again, as you mentioned, Beverly, some of these horses, depending on the locale and the geography of where they're from, may never have seen trees like this or many other surprises that are out there on the course.
That's right. This horse coming from Washington, I would suggest that he has seen trees. But you're absolutely right that, you can never tell what's going to challenge the horse. Or the driver, for that matter.
Now, we've noticed most of the navigators so far today riding along on the back of the carriage. Of course, there doesn't seem to be anywhere for the navigator on the back of this carriage.
Well, I think as a navigator, you feel safer standing on the back. I think it's a much nicer feeling. But some two wheels do have a step. I think we'll see one competitor later on with a step on the back of a two wheel. Of course, all the four wheels you can stand on the back. You can see his navigator there with her little map in the hand explaining what to do. So let's see how he deals with this water.
A little tentative, but you can see still not that shiny reflection on the top, and he's not the only horse who seems to have less trouble with that than they do with the water in Jurassic Park.
In years past, they've come in and out of the water in Jurassic Park, and it seems to have been easier for them.
Now, I imagine, Beverly, there's no such thing as a perfect horse. You learn things and make changes every year, I suspect.
We're constantly, adjusting different things and taking note, and particularly if it's for safety reasons. So he's doing well in this one.
When you can see the depth of the water when they go through there, it's almost up to the axle of the wheel itself. So you can understand a little apprehension on the horse's part, just not quite knowing how deep that water is. Some appreciative applause from some of the fans here at today's event. Well, this beautiful white Arab horse is Emma. And that's Lorraine Mullin driving. Jane Dahl is the navigator.
Now, Lorraine has represented Canada at the Driving for the Disabled and done exceedingly well. So one of the great things about combined driving is that everyone is equal. There's no distinction between man or woman or, handicapped or not handicapped, and no distinction on the breed. So long as, the horse can do the job, you can compete. So it's a great equalizer, and I think, like, one of the things for Lorraine is that she's just a regular person when she's here. She was 7th after the dressage and did really well in the cones. So she came in here, you know, with a good chance. Another thing to remember is that the 4-wheel carriages have brakes.
Keep in mind
The 2 wheels don't have brakes. And so you can help the horses a lot on the hills, even going around corners and so on if you've got brakes. And so the breeching, the part of the harness that goes behind the horse, isn't so important with a 4-wheel carriage as it is with a 2.
And why no brakes on a 2-wheel carriage?
Most 2-wheel carts just don't come with brakes. I mean, there are exceptions, but that's just the way that they're made, and it's easier to do the braking with the breeching with just the shafts rather than with this, which has the independent shafts. The shafts move completely independently of one another, and usually they're heavier than a 2-wheel, so you know it's more important to keep them off the horse.
Well, Lorraine guiding Emma nicely through this without too much trouble so far.
You spoke too soon, Scott.
Yeah, beautiful timing on my part as always, as they get a wheel stuck on a post there, but they get out of that nicely. A bit of trouble here, but now they seem to be underway.
Quite a noisy carriage. Did you hear that sort of banging along? That in itself would be a little bit scary for the horse. No, she's taking the same route that Alison took, coming around the outside there to A. And then the short route.
One of the visually appealing characteristics of this is that every competitor's carriage is different, and there really are some beautiful ones.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them look like antiques, but they are mostly new carriages, aren't they?
Most of them are specifically built for this. This carriage has been built in Vancouver, you know, specifically with this in mind. In the bigger competitions, you'll see the antique carriages sometimes in the dressage and cones, and a different carriage for the marathon. But in a small event like this, or you know, on the West Coast, most of us have only one carriage. And just the logistics of taking 2 carriages to a competition makes you try and get a versatile carriage. So there's the navigator holding it down for her.
A quick canter to get out of the obstacle, and then back to the trot again. Or see, it's not a trot, I guess, is it?
Mm-hmm. So here she is. You see, you just don't see them coming through the in gate, and that's what we were talking about earlier. So let's hope she does well with the water.
And the problem we've seen so far is the high reflection off of the water here due to the lighting conditions.
Get in there!
That's great. And, you know, Arab horses are reputed not to like water, so that's great. That's nice to see an Arab just go straight through like that.
No trouble for Emma at all there. So back up the hill now they go to Once Upon a Time. Through the trees, through and around the trees.
What we can't see here is the carousel horses, so we decorated this year with carousel horses and with bears, but they're just outside the camera range.
Well, we keep mentioning how beautiful it is here in the Mount Newton Valley and the gorgeous weather we've had, but you really need to come to this event 1 September and just walk around and see all the work that's gone into it and the beautiful settings at each of the obstacles, not to mention the natural settings that you are surrounded by at all times up here. But it's a great place to bring your family, isn't it, Beverly? And just walk around and see the sights.
Oh, it's super. I mean, it's a great family outing, and they can bring a picnic. We always have a concession, but we encourage people to bring a picnic and just sit and enjoy themselves.
And you have, of course, all the services that spectators would need,
Yes, we do.
which means, of course, washroom and concessions and that kind of thing.
And they get a real feel for it now that we have an announcer. You know, you kind of get into the spirit of it a bit more with being told all the time what's going on.
And, of course, the PA guy, you can't see him on camera, but he's got a beautiful vantage point way up on the top of the hill there. He can really see the whole valley from where he is.
He can see just about the whole course. It's a great spot, and you notice there are quite a few spectators up there with him.
And of course, he's announcing the times through the obstacles almost immediately after they're done. So obviously your communication systems have grown with the event over the years.
Well, this year we've asked one of the obstacle judges to have a radio in each hazard, so they immediately radio up the provisional times to the announcer. It seems to be working really well.
Well, and things have gone quite well for Emma and Lorraine Mullin and Jane Dahl, the navigator. And as they head through their last obstacle, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. More competition right after this.
This program is brought to you in part by Maho Properties Limited, creators and principal developers of Gordon Point Mews, a new 14-unit exclusive townhome development. The organizers of the 1998 Victoria Horse Driving Trials wish to extend their appreciation to the following individuals and businesses for their support of this annual event.
Well, now we're here with Marguerite Morrison, who is the show manager of the 6th Annual Victoria Horse Driving Trials. And Marguerite, this is a bigger show every year. Tell me, how many volunteers do you have, and how many people go into making all of this work?
Well, today we have about 70 volunteers to make it all go. And then over from the spring, usually the spring on, the volunteers start. They're painting, they're cutting things out, they're getting things all ready. And so it's over 100 regulars.
And a lot of different kinds of work they do too. There's of course construction and painting and all the decorations on the hazards around here. It really is quite a scene.
It is, and one of the biggest things that has to be kept up are the trails and the blackberry vines that come out and grow out. So there's a couple of ladies come almost regularly and they keep those cut down. For example, there's a group that come here from one of the homes that they're here picking up rocks, any debris that they can find. And then we have usually the ladies who come and they touch up the painting on the different things. But every year Beverly Marley comes up with some other kind of decoration. Very, very creative lady. And everything sort of comes together with many, many people, and you couldn't begin to count. And the hours, you can't even begin to count the hours. Full time, the last 2 weeks basically is full time for 3 or 4 people. And they just go at it, and there's other volunteers that are coming in all the time. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it shows too. Tell me, this is the 6th annual event. How has the show changed over the years as far as you've seen it?
Bigger and better every year. Every year.
And you expect that to continue, I guess?
Oh, yes, except that, as you can see, there's only so much room around here, but I understand that the farmers in the valley here are very supportive of it and say that we can move out into their farms and everything, so it's going to get bigger.
So there's even more people helping out to help the whole show happen. How does the fact that this is the Interprovincial Championship here this year change the show, and where will the Interprovincial Championships be next year, if you know?
I'm not sure where it will be next year. This is the first time that they've done it, as I understand, in BC, and hope that it would, because we are, according to the course designer, Tim Wright, we're right up there at number 1 and 2 in shows in Canada, and so it gave us that opportunity to try it here. And We're growing every year, so it's very difficult to say that it was the interprovincial that caused more growth or not.
Well, when I pulled into the parking lot here today, I was welcomed very nicely by a couple of young volunteers who welcomed me to the show and showed me where to park. So it is very well organized for the spectators. I know you encourage spectators here, and even though you mentioned there's not a lot of room, there is still plenty of room for spectators. So talk about how much you would like to see people come by.
Oh, we'd like to. We'd like people to see it. What we're seeing, and we're just talking about it, there's a lot more people now taking a look, and they're trying to decide what the things are supposed to be happening and what on earth is going on, and there's somebody else who now can answer a lot of the questions, and so it's word of mouth has gotten going really well, the knowledge of what's going on, because it's relatively new to a lot of people. They've never heard of it, or they've never, certainly never seen it. So it gives them an exciting time. So the number of spectators has grown quite a bit, and we encourage them to come. We'd like to see them come. And people who have been driving or riding in the past, excuse me, and now they find out they could drive. And so we get a lot of new people kind of interested in coming.
And it is a different kind of thing, because one of the things I notice is the teamwork between the driver and the horse. It really is a team out there.
It's a team, totally. It's got to be a team, or there's a problem.
And these horses are pretty smart, aren't they?
They are very wise, and they know what they want to do, and sometimes it's not the same as what the driver wants to do. But you just never, the drivers never know how the horse feels that day, so it can be a challenge. Mm-hmm.
Well, a wonderful job for you all again, Marguerite, this year. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, and I hope everybody enjoyed themselves today and come back next year and bring a friend.
Well, this is horse number 16, Mary. Mary's being driven by Molly White and navigated by Katie Belesne. And I hope I haven't butchered her name too badly.
Katie is actually Molly's granddaughter.
And Katie and Molly both are from Ladysmith, BC.
The horse is Mary, I beg your pardon, is a Canadian horse, and that's a breed of horses. It's a very old Canadian breed, and they're considered to be light draft horses. Molly has been to every competition that we've ever had, but quite often she's with a different horse, even once with a miniature horse. So there are 35 of these Canadian horses in BC, and Mary even had a foal this spring. So the first time that Molly took her anywhere, the foal was in the barn during the competition. They're very, very nice disposition horses.
And very quick through that obstacle as well. Very, very efficiently done.
Seem to do a great job. Molly is just the neatest person. There she is chatting with Marguerite, who is her sister actually. And of course you're not allowed to get any information regarding the course, or you'll be eliminated. But people can wish you well and that kind of thing. That's fine.
Hey, move it on! You're in the way!
Molly always greets the volunteers. She's worked so many times at competitions, that she always says hi, and then when she's leaving, she always says thank you. She's really a neat lady. You can see her granddaughter working really hard on the back of that. There's a two-wheel cart with a step that we were talking about earlier.
Well, you can tell that they've done this before, Beverly. They're very efficient, making these turns quite well and not wasting any time at all.
Well, Molly has done it, but Mary isn't experienced. I think it's her second competition, so she's doing exceedingly well. She keeps looking to the left as though she'd like to get out of there, but she's keeping it together.
Very nicely done. A nice round of applause as they leave that obstacle.
I think that's the best time in that obstacle so far, 52 seconds. We'll see which way she goes to A.
Into the Victoria Cross now they go.
She's trying to take the longer route and keep the rhythm, and I really think she's doing a great job. I think that's the route that I would have taken if I'd been in the competition.
And competitor, just one moment.
She's having a great time here.
I guess it's safe to say, Beverly, that the reason you're not in the competition is because there's just too much else for you to do. It would be impossible, I guess, for you to actually drive as well.
Well, I ended up with a lot of jobs this year, but my horse isn't actually going at the moment. But I'm determined next year, less jobs and drive. So that was another incredible time. She had 54 seconds in that obstacle. She's doing an absolutely superb job today. Oops, we nearly lost her.
More evidence of the rough ride sustained by the drivers and navigators in different parts of the course.
Thank you.
And back up the hill into Once Upon a Time.
They're really moving along. I mean, you can see a tremendous difference here with some of the competitors. And that's typical Molly. Do you see she's got a yellow ribbon in Mary's hair so that they all match? You can see Molly's stopwatch is flipped around to the back. Each driver will have their own stopwatch that's running on the entire time of the competition. They're competing so that they know where they are. And the navigator will have a stopwatch, and she'll be, giving the driver the time all the way. And that's your only, the only way you know how you're doing, because you have a limited amount of time.
Got water in my eyes.
She's just doing an incredible job in here.
Well, it really has been an efficient run in every obstacle so far. Barely a flaw in the performance so far of this team. And you can see that even though Mary, as you mentioned, isn't the most experienced horse, Molly's experience is guiding them beautifully through this.
And her enthusiasm. I mean, if I were her horse, I'd want to do it too, because she's so excited and.
Well, there's perhaps the standard that the other competitors will be shooting for, including this one. Another gorgeous animal, Spring, is the horse, driven by Mike McCormack, and Siggy McCormack is the navigator on the back. Another of our American friends, the McCormacks, and Spring from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
So we saw one other Arab in the competition, and so this is a bay Arab. So he's getting pretty uptight here. It's limited how many ways they can tell you that they're not happy about something.
Well, of course, it's a speed competition, but you can see from the last competitor and probably all of them that as important as speed is, it also increases your risk factor for potential disaster, doesn't it?
That's right. He needs to get trotting here or you'll get into trouble with penalties. You're only allowed 5 seconds, out of the pace. There we go.
Now, to get them back to a trot again, is it just simply a matter of speed control?
Well, you're doing what I call half halts, and using your voice just to try and calm them down and bring them back. But when you see a horse with his head in the air like that, you know they're not 100% paying attention. So he's just kind of maybe just a little bit apprehensive about everything. So he'll just be trying to get him to settle. There he goes. He's getting a little bit uptight again. remember too, if the driver is apprehensive or whatever, the horse picks those vibrations up.
Well, this horse's name is Spring, as we mentioned, and you can see why. He's certainly got a lot of spring in his step.
I think he wants to go and have an argument with those sailboats. Let's see if he can get him to settle before he actually gets to the gate. And he's not. He needs to work at getting him settled before he leaves the hazard, so that he's leaving at the trot.
That kind of rambunctious enthusiasm for the horse, is that kind of a mixed blessing, good and bad both?
Well, it makes them far more difficult to control. I mean, it's not something that I particularly look for, but there are people who enjoy that, so it's, you know, everyone gets what they want. He's doing
Have completed hazard 5 in 1 minute 32 seconds.
Doing the short routes here. With some horses, they just get really fired up when it comes to this section of the competition, and it's just the different personalities. So in that case, you'd wonder why he turned and came back this way rather than continuing on, but I mean, he probably has a really good reason for his route.
Well, and as you mentioned, some horses prefer to turn one way and not the
That's
other.
right.
Down into Jurassic Park now. And we'll see if there's any trouble at the water, as we've seen from a couple of horses here with this high reflection off the top of this water. The horses don't know how deep it is, and they've had some trouble, but not in this
Done
case.
really well.
Didn't go straight through. And a squeal of delight from Siggy McCormack on the back.
This is another one of those two-wheel carts with this step on them. And you can see the basket. Each cart has to have a spares kit on board so that they would be able to take care of an emergency. They're not allowed to leave on the marathon until they've been through a safety check and it's all been approved.
So there is a first aid kit in the box there.
Well, it'll be a first aid, but it'll also be, you know, a wheel wrench, and we all take duct tape and a knife and things like that may be of assistance if you get into any kind of trouble.
The idea would be just having enough equipment on board to fix a potential mechanical disaster should it happen.
That's right. I mean, you know, the odd time you get hung on something and a piece of leather breaks and you have to have a splice so that you can, you know, splice it together again. All really to do with safety and comfort of the horse.
And along those lines, what sort of medical attention do you have there for should a driver or navigator get injured, or veterinary services?
Well, there is a vet in the vet box, and all these horses will have been through the vet check before they were allowed to start this section of the competition.
Well, and that's the final obstacle for Spring and the McCormacks. And now here's an old favorite, one we've seen at several competitions before. This is Takla, with Susan Billings driving, and Juanita Ptolemy, the navigator from Cobble Hill.
Well, we always enjoy having Sue. I mean, look at them. They're just having a wonderful time. She just has the greatest attitude.
And their wooden carriage is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Sue actually has another horse at home, but she has so much fun with Takla that she's sort of sticking with Takla for the driving and then saving her other horse for riding.
Well, Takla is not one of the bigger, more dynamic horses we've seen, but an old pro at this, and Takla really loves this.
She does. I mean, she's having a lot of fun, and she's a fjord pony. Do you notice that her mane is totally different from all the other horses that have been through? And so it sticks straight up. That's how it's supposed to be. And once again, horses with great dispositions.
And you notice the mane is black along the edge there. Is that natural or is that colored?
No, that's how they're made. And they're sort of like little draft horses, you know. They're very, very strong and very versatile.
A little stockier build than some of the other horses we've seen.
That's right. So whereas you wouldn't normally be able to ride a pony of this size or an adult, but because of their build, they can take adults. Here's Juanita pointing the way. They're just a great team.
Competitor number
Sue sounds so mean, you know, she wouldn't hurt a fly.
1 minute 45 seconds. 46 seconds on play. That's competitor number 15 has completed obstacle 4 in 1 minute 46 seconds. Competitor number 16 has completed obstacle 4 in 1 minute 5 seconds. Competitor
As we
number
mentioned,
17.
Takla maybe not the fastest horse here, but very efficient through the obstacle.
Competitor
Steadily moving on.
finished.
Yeah, well, that's an improvement. I mean, you can remember in the past where we couldn't get Takla to
Intermediate.
take 3 steps forward, so she's actually trotting, and the odd time you even see Sue have her canter now.
Number 31 is horrible.
But this is really just the spirit of competition, you know. It's just there to have fun.
They have completed section A in 24 minutes 56 seconds. That is intermediate.
She took 1 minute and 6 seconds in that obstacle, which is a lot more than Molly. But here they are now at the Victoria Cross. See, cantering, my goodness. That's the first person we've seen take that route. It's very interesting that they would have done that.
Of course, the actual route is up to the competitor as long as they pass through each gate.
That's correct. And don't forget the human error too, you know, sometimes we forget where we're supposed to be going.
1 minute 9 seconds.
Well, left can become right sometimes, and we've seen that once or twice already.
Actually, you know, there's one competitor here, and I'm not quite sure who it is, and they've written left and right on their hands.
Competitor 14.
So they obviously have a few problems that way, but they've solved them.
Competitor number 16 completed hazard 5 in 47 seconds.
Ready?
And competitor number 19 finished hazard 1 in 1 minute 7
There's a
seconds.
bit of indecision, but they did it. You can hear the applause. She's a real crowd pleaser.
And a regular favorite here at the Victoria Horse Driving Trials. We've seen Takla many times before, and Takla has improved. This is a place where we've seen Takla have a little trouble before,
Wow,
but not so today.
fantastic.
Good, silly goose. Good girl. How's that way? Shut up. Good girl. Go.
Well, certainly no trouble there.
Takla.
We saw Takla one year actually take a drink out of that pond, I think.
Well, we're going to see her through water again. It's not all over yet.
And I was going to mention what a beautiful old wooden carriage they're driving, but it's probably not that old, is it?
I don't think it's very old, but it's very attractive.
It's built with that antique look that sort of adds to the charm of this whole event.
Well, you try and have your carriage, you know, appropriate to the horse or the pony, and I think that this is a good choice for this pony. I mean, if she had a really fancy black thing, you know, it probably wouldn't be very appropriate. This is called a cross-country cart.
Trot, trot, trot. Good girl. Trot up.
Sue's doing a great job in here.
Yeah.
Takla's moving along nicely.
Takla. Don't quit now. Thank Thank you.
And there's the thank you to the course workers as they go by.
There we go. Here's Takla's favorite thing.
A little deeper water for Takla this time. She tries to follow the shoreline a bit there, and now, oh, maybe a bit thirsty. No, Takla's decided to rest in the water.
Last year she actually tried to roll, so it will be fun to see what she does this year. It's sort of part of the entertainment, you know.
Yeah.
There she goes.
She's having a little drink there, stomping around a bit in the water, having a little fun at her driver's expense here now.
And short of putting the navigator down in that deep water, there really isn't very much you can do.
You can hear the crowd enjoying some of this too, and even the driver's having a good laugh at this point. I guess you reach a stage where there's nothing else you can do but laugh. There you see Takla basically
Unfortunately, they have to go through again, so let's see what happens. See, the frogs don't bother her. Can you see the triplets dancing in the background? But the water.
Takla going exactly as fast as Takla wants at this point.
Get out. Come on. This is silly. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Speedy.
If Takla had half of Sue's energy.
Okay, Takla, you get
It could be that Takla does and just chooses not to expend it right now.
You know the footing's good. You know that it's good.
And she's very obliging about going in.
It's just a little problem with staying in. And here she goes again, a bit of a show. Wonder if Takla knows everyone's watching and she's the star right now.
Takla, get going, you stinker. Takla, come on, keep up. Yeah, we made it.
And there they come out of the water, finally.
Now she's going to take the land route back to the in and out gate. This is the last obstacle too, so the horses are tending to get tired by this stage. Great crowd appeal there.
And maybe the biggest hand of the day for Takla and her ministrations in the water. Well, this is Terran now. Jerry Friz is driving this beautiful horse. Another competitor from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
This is another one of those fjords too, so just a different energy level.
And of course a four-wheeled cart this time with the space on the back for the navigator.
He's really trucking around there, isn't he? Jerry came up last year, and he was our first competitor to come up from Idaho, so we're just delighted that he came again this year.
This horse about the same size, and in fact it is the same height and nearly the same color as Takla, our last competitor, but seems to have a little more spring in his step.
That's right. One of the great things about fjords, if you want to have a pair or four in hand or something, is that they're all almost identical. I mean, the colors are all the same, the manes are the same, you know, so it makes them easy to match in that respect.
So every fjord horse comes out looking about the same.
Mm-hmm. And Jerry's son flew up to navigate for him, so he actually drove up by himself, and then his son came in on Friday night. I think it takes them about 14 hours of driving, so that's a long haul.
Well, it says something for the love of the sport that the competitors have here. They really are passionate about this, every one of them.
Well, there's so few competitions in the Northwest, you know, that we have to take advantage of all of them.
And competitor 15 has completed hazard 5 in 1 minute 9 seconds.
He's keeping a nice rhythm going through here.
Competitor 14 completed hazard 6 in 1 minute 20 seconds. Competitor
See
number
the horse
16
working hard too. You can tell that this isn't just a walk in the park for these guys. The horses work very, very hard.
Competitor number 19 finished hazard 1 in 1 minute 7 seconds.
Bit of trouble on a corner there, but they worked through it nicely. Probably the first time a lot of these animals have seen a killer whale, inflatable or not.
I'm sure it is. Well, that's an excellent time, and really did well.
And nicely back into the trot as soon as they hit the boundary of the obstacle.
You heard that he did the last one in 53 seconds, which is an excellent time. And being the smaller horse, do you see it was easier for him to do that?
Taking the quick route into the Victoria Cross. Almost everything Terran has done now with Jerry Friz driving has been pretty quick.
Jerry spent last year down in Florida doing dressage training for the entire winter. He said, thank heavens, he got out just ahead of the rain. But it's made a tremendous difference to his driving this year. I mean, it's just like a different person, different horse. It's great.
Competitor number 20 has finished obstacle 1 in 1 minute 10 seconds.
He won the cones event, so you know he's got the horse in control and that the horse is very maneuverable.
Well, it seems like we have a fairly knowledgeable crowd here for the driving trials again this year, but you don't have to have any experience to come and enjoy the event, do you?
Not really. I mean, you can just enjoy being in the country, seeing the horses, and of course the people can get right up to the horses and pat them and so on. That was great.
So no trouble at Jurassic Park for Terran and Jerry Friz driving.
Jerry retired about 2 years ago from being an airline pilot, and he said he retired so as to be able to drive. This is his life.
So up into and through and around the trees they go.
It's really tight what he's doing.
Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Good boy.
I'm sure that was a really good time.
Very cleanly through that obstacle. Now into the water, certainly no hesitation there.
So now we know it's not the breed, it's just Takla.
Yes, you have to think that Terran and Jerry Friz are going to have a little better time through this obstacle than Susan and Takla did.
You'll notice it was very easy. Well, you can see they went through B. And you remember, always with the red on the right. They're really going in. That's an incredible time.
Well, a nice job by them, and now we'll see our first pair of horses that we've seen in the competition today. The horses are called Pride and Sugar, and they're being driven by Tom Veinotte. The navigator is Ro Veinotte. And all four of them are from Maple Ridge, BC.
Venotte's breed Morgan horses, and Ro is actually the father. And he's promised not to backseat drive, but I can't imagine that happening. He's doing a great job at the moment, keeping the carriage on the ground. These horses were here last year, but they were driven by Kay, Tom's wife, who's driving a single horse today, later on in the competition.
Tell us about some of the differences and the problems encountered driving two horses as opposed to one.
Well, in some way, you know, some people think it's easier to drive two horses in that they'll balance each other. But in this situation, in the obstacles, of course, you know, it's the extra width in the front. And this carriage is quite narrow to have for two horses to be in the front. So just figuring out how much space you need would make a difference. And then keeping two horses concentrating all the time, keeping them moving together.
And I guess it's possible to have, say, a water hazard where one horse would willingly go in, but the other one box.
That's right. But in some ways, you know, one will help to settle the other one.
Give all of them a hand. Thank you very much.
And so they have to choose a slightly, you know, allow a little bit more space, take a slightly different route.
There you see the navigator shifting the carriage over a bit, helping them around the corners.
They had a lot of problems in the water last year,
Competitor number 15.
the waterfall. So hopefully we won't see a repeat of that this year.
Competitor number 15. Just a moment.
Tom is a very experienced driver,
One more time.
but he mentioned earlier that he thought he was going to be quite challenged by the exuberance of the pair that today.
Competitor number 16 has finished by the 59 seconds. That's a burnout.
Pride and Sugar are the names of the two horses. It's kind of hard to tell them apart. They're almost identical.
Has it 5 in 52 seconds.
But when you breed your own horses, as they do, I suppose, you know, then they're specifically breeding them to match.
You see a little white spot between the eyes on one of them, so that's probably that'll probably help us from now on. I still don't know which one is which.
No.
Right, get up, right. Get up. Ah, girl.
Nice entrance there into the Victoria Cross. And you can see it's a good example here of some of the troubles of getting both horses to do the same thing at the same time.
Come.
And it seems they have to take the turns a little wider in order to fit the double width of the horses through first.
The placement, you know, you'll notice that they don't necessarily have the horses exactly side by side. They'll try and get one slightly in front of the other, going around the corners so as to, you know, take less space.
Let's go, Patty. Dig. Come on, boy.
The carriage for a pair is, you know, has to be a little bit heavier than the carriage for a single. So there are some differences in the vehicle.
Get in there! Get in there, Sugar! I'll take my head. Grab her
Here
head.
they are at Jurassic Park now, and a little bit of trouble for Sugar. And
So
here's
they've put the broom down.
She don't jump on you. Come on. Get up.
still Sugar
Get up.
refusing to
Get up,
go.
Friday.
And you can see they're actually out on the edge here.
Get up, Friday. Come on. Get up, Friday.
And even after they're in the water, still the horse refuses to go, and now they fight their way through.
Okay.
So there'll be a penalty there, I take it.
They will have a penalty for having the groom down, but remember the other competitor, he didn't put his groom down and he actually missed the exit gate, so their decision was a wise one.
And they made it quickly, too. They could see the horse was going to be a problem and decided to deal with it right away.
That's right.
And you can see now at this stage of the course how the horses are starting to get a little sweaty and foamy from all the hard work they're doing. And we've even seen that the driver and navigator get their chance to do a lot of hard work as well.
Well, the water will have contributed to the wetness. Having trouble in the water would have contributed to the, you know, the anxiety and the sweating.
And even though all four competitors here are working hard, it's good to see that neither of the two at the back have foam on their mouth.
That's right. They're handling the whole thing really well. But that's the difference with a very experienced driver.
Oh, and a nice job by the Veinottes as they head out of Once Upon a Time.
Get up, Sugar. Sugar, get in there. Get up,
Now here's some more water for Sugar, and once again, Sugar does not like this idea at all.
Get up.
So far, the groom's still on the carriage,
Go, come on.
hoping to convince them other than physically.
But at least you see here they have a lot more space.
Right. And not the reflection problem that we've
That's
talked
right.
about too at the other obstacle. In fact, we've seen every pair that had trouble at Jurassic Park in the reflective water there has had less trouble in this obstacle.
But last year in the water they had a problem, but it was a driver error. It wasn't that the horses refused. I lost the broom there,
Get in there. Sugar, get up in there. Get up. Get up in there. Get. Come on. Get up, Sugar. Get up. Good girl.
And the horses are through, and the frog continues calmly fishing away. Well, here's our next pair of horses, Gem and Tundra. Are these two beauties? They're being driven by Neil Trenholm, and that's Linda Trenholm navigating on the back. The Trenholms